acquaintance, and she changed my life. She changed my life, but by just helping me get back on track. She didn't take a non-rabbi nun and make me one. She just made it possible for me psychologically and emotionally to get back on track. And we were married 20 years until she died from glioblastoma, a form of cancer in the brain. And as a result of that, I lost the love of my life. And if I didn't meet Denise a few months later, I already knew Denise 5-6 years from shul. Denise is a member of our shul. But if Denise and I had not reestablished the way we understood our relationship with each other, I don't know what would have been. But Ellen changed my life by bringing back my life. THIRTIETH HaMeitim. So it's very, very important to me that every year at her Yahrzeit, that I honor her in a public way, even if only Denise stays for the last 20 minutes for that Yahrzeit. She was born secularly on July 9, passed away on July 2. And so this is Yahrzeit season. Yahrzeit's the middle of the week. May her memory be blessed. And this way, by doing the intro in the beginning, I can cut that out of the YouTube, and I will leave in the memorial at the end. So the last 20 minutes today will be in memory of Ellen, for those who want to stay. And I'm putting it at the end, so you have the option of not staying. By contrast, if I put it in the beginning, you're stuck. So we're going to start now. 2-3 quick themes, and it'll all fit together as we watch. One big theme that'll come up this week. There was a few weeks ago, there was a 12-year-old Jewish girl in France who was raped. So we're going to cover that, what went on in France, because we cover Israel, Gaza, and the Jewish world. Secondly, England just had an election, as you may know, and they kicked out the Conservative Party after 14 years. And in England, Conservative Party is really a liberal party. And the Liberal Party is a socialist party, and the Socialist Party is a communist party. There's no conservative. The conservatives are this guy, Nigel Farage or something. I showed him last week for a few minutes. He's incredibly pro-Israel. He's a true conservative. The Conservative Party, compared to the Labor, they're okay. But they pressure Israel plenty. They're like Biden. They're more pro-Israel as long as Israel doesn't do anything and doesn't defend itself. And as long as just once in a while a few Jews get killed, they really, really become very pro-Israel. They're out. Labor has historically been anti-Israel or nominally pro-Israel. You need like a roadmap, but they never, ever, either Labor or Conservative, never cast a veto in the United Nations for Israel. They leave all the heavy lifting to the United States. And they talk the talk, but it was Labor who, they occupied Palestine. We had to decolonize Palestine by kicking them out. And so that's Labor. So the last few elections, they had a guy named Jeremy Corbyn, who's mamish an anti-Semite. He's a real 1940s quality anti-Semite. It's shocking that outside of Nazi Germany, a guy like that could actually have been a candidate for office. And he's still in the parliament. After he led Labor to an historic defeat, giving the Conservatives an amazing win under Boris Johnson, a new guy took over Labor. His name is Keir Starmer, and he threw out Corbyn. They didn't just say you're no longer the leader. They threw him out of the party. Keir Starmer just got elected in the biggest landslide like forever. Like got 400. They've got like 80% of the parliament, so they don't need any other party for a parliamentary coalition. It's very unusual. The reason I'm talking about this, because our Sunday class really is not about the rest of the world's politics, but about Jewish issues, is that all of a sudden, from out of nowhere, He's giving like his last interview before the election, the day before the election. He's interviewed, makes sense. And he says the following thing. They're asking him, what are you going to do? You're going to win by a landslide, the polls show. And what are you going to do? And he's telling him, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. The only exception is Friday evenings are off limits. Every Friday at 6 p.m., I don't work the rest of the night. So they say, why not? She says, because my wife is Jewish and Friday night is the Sabbath. I personally says he's an atheist and he's non-Jewish, but part of being married to his wife is the agreement that we're going to raise the kids Jewish, and Friday night is Shabbat. And for the British to hear that nation of anti-Semites, as they would say, those anti-Semites, where you even need a guy like Stephen Fry at Christmas time to tell you that he's a Jew who loves Christmas and he hopes you won't kill him because he's Jewish, because he does Christmas too. So it was like an uproar in England. You never told us that before. Here, we're going to give you a landslide tomorrow. We didn't know you take off Friday night for Semite stuff. And it was like a whole big thing. Now, for those of us with Shomer Shabbat, we know that if you're the prime minister or president and there's an emergency, that's pikuach nefesh, you do what you have to do. Had Joe Lieberman made it into becoming vice president to Al Gore, and if there were an invasion by Putin, I mean, off the record, just between us girls and anybody watching on YouTube, the British don't matter anyway. Do you think like they take themselves so seriously? I mean, Putin invades Ukraine. What's the British going to do? Hamas, what are the British going to do? If the British decide we don't want you, Israel, who cares? The only one to care, if anything, is America. As long as America is going to give us weapons for Israel, and as long as America, who cares about the British or the French? They care about it. So they feel comfortable and they have a permanent seat on the Security Council, and they feel big, even though the fact is that Germany can step on the two of them and they don't have a seat, or Japan. So anyway, the British went crazy and he stuck to his guns. And he said, he's available in an emergency, but Friday night, and then it comes out more. And at 8 o'clock, his son has karate class. And at 10 o'clock, his daughter has roller derby or roller skating. So it's not like your standard Shabbat. And it turns out they're members of a Reform temple, which is very rare in England. England, like the whole country, are Orthodox, even those who don't keep Shabbat. Everybody's Orthodox. They're under the chief rabbinate. And even if you're not Orthodox, it's like South African Jews who won't go to Reform or conservative temples, even though they don't keep Shabbat. Because in the British Empire, it's Orthodox. And the Orthodox run the cemeteries. And if they want to be buried in the Jewish cemetery, they affiliate Orthodox. So for someone to affiliate Reform, not so exciting. And on top of that, turns out that the Jewish wife is the daughter of a Jewish mother who really was non-Jewish but converted to Judaism and ended up in a Reform temple. So she's not really, you finished the sentence, Mad Libs. She was converted by a Reform rabbi in a Reform temple. So she's not really, and you finished the sentence. So but still, if he thinks he's Jewish, there's nothing to hate. And frankly, I guess he's not even intermarried if you think about it. So, but that's a big news item this week. Thirdly, Israel killed a major Hezbollah guy up in Lebanon, like they're number 3. So Israel's been like a bowling alley. They've knocked off like 3 or 4 already of the of the different Hezbollah leaders. So we're going to be seeing that. And as always, by now, thank God, you'll recognize what a Hezbollah funeral looks like, because Baruch Hashem, we've gotten to see a few of them. So those are some of the main things. And there may be a Cori Bush thing or two to remind you. We've already gotten to know the Jamal Bowman, y'all. And Cori Bush, God willing, is next. She's the squad member in St. Louis area who's a big anti-Semite. And AIPAC coming off the success of knocking off Jamal Bowman. and also of a Republican this past week, Bob Good, who always votes against money for Israel. Cori Bush, God willing, is next. So those are some of the themes. And without further ado, this was just the week of July 4th, which is 2 days after July 2nd, the Independence Day. And I begin with a song tribute to America with a Jewish message. Here we go. Thank you as always for being here. I've tried something different. I hope it removes some of the black squares that come up on the screen. And if it doesn't work, I'll find out and I'll try a new thing. But here we go. Okay. Just give me a moment as always to get these little splashes off the screen. I'm going to take that off and we're going to do that. And here we go.
Special dedicated to our senator, my senator from New Jersey, Senator Cory Booker. While the storm clouds gather far across the sea, let us pledge allegiance to a land that's free. Let us all be grateful for a land so fair, as we raise our voices in a solemn prayer. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. Gott bench Amerika, die Land, wo's ich lieb, steige bei ihr in Madrich Zair, mit der Strahl überall über ihr, find die Bergen, bis die Tulen, bis die Amen, weiß mit Scham. Gott bench Amerika, mein süße Heim. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bench Amerika, meine süße
Okay, I'm walking with Professor Shai Davidai right outside the gates of Columbia University's campus. He's going to try to enter campus. He has his Columbia University ID. He's trying to enter.
1 second.
Oh, I'm sorry, Shai.
Sorry,
Hi.
1 second. I want to get this on video that they have deactivated This is the sound of civil rights being denied of a Jewish professor. I want you all to remember this sign.
Did you get any prior notice?
I did not get any prior notice. I emailed them and they wouldn't respond. I got an email 2 a.m. yesterday calling this a counter-protest. And I said, no, this is not a counter-protest. This is a Jewish professor who has a right to be on campus, and you're denying him his right.
On Sunday afternoon, a 12-year-old girl was talking with a friend standing outside the block of flats where she lives. 3 boys in their early teens approached her. They dragged her to this abandoned nursery building nearby and hit her and insulted her. Their motive, she had hidden the fact that she was Jewish. 2 of the boys then raped the girl, while the 3rd filmed the scene. On Tuesday evening, 2 13-year-olds were charged with gang rape, anti-Semitic insults and violence, and issuing death threats, and remanded in custody. The 3rd boy, aged 12, was charged with anti-Semitic insults and violence and allowed to return home.
At that age, how can they think of doing something like that? There's a mix of many elements: anti-Semitism, blackmail, revenge. These young people are uninhibited when it comes to violence. They have no limit.
This Wednesday, during the Council of Ministers, President Emmanuel Macron made a solemn and serious address denouncing the scourge of anti-Semitism. He also called for discussions with pupils to be organised in French schools in coming days. In the midst of campaigning for legislative elections, the far-right's Marine Le Pen denounced the stigmatization of Jews by the extreme left. She was taking aim at Jean-Luc Mélenchon's France Unbowed party, accused on Wednesday by French Justice Minister Éric Dupond-Moretti of feeding hatred. The party said it was horrified by the rape and denounced anti-Semitic racism. In the first quarter of 2024, France saw a 300% rise in anti-Semitic acts compared to the same period a year earlier.
Joshua Zarka, Israeli ambassador to France, thank you very much for having us.
Welcome to the Israeli embassy in France.
We cannot begin this discussion other than by talking about the 12-year-old girl who was brutally raped. It upset everyone greatly.
This is a despicable event, which in a certain way imitates the events of October 7th. It was perpetrated by children, young people, who have lost their way. We were horrified. The Jewish community was horrified. I must also say that the French government, in its entirety, was also upset. And I have no doubt that justice will be done to these children, these young people, as severely as possible.
President Macron took a little time to react, to condemn it.
It's a shame he didn't do it immediately. But remember that in the end, he's caught up in an electoral campaign that's very complex, being held in an equally difficult political context. He gave instructions to all educational establishments to add educational content about anti-Semitism. I have no doubt that President Macron understands the issue of anti-Semitism. He takes the problem very seriously, and I'm sure he'll fight it, as he has done until now, in the most uncompromising way possible. There is a campaign, funded and very well orchestrated, behind which there are many countries, led by Qatar. Qatar finances numerous anti-Israeli actions, which take place in France, in the United States, on several university campuses. There is no doubt that this campaign fuels anti-Semitism and the very strong hostility felt by part of the Muslim population in the world against Israel.
I quote Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, France has shown great antagonism and strong hostility toward us by grossly ignoring the horrific acts perpetrated in Israel. And regarding the American, French, and Israeli Commission on Lebanon, what was the reaction in France to this declaration?
They frowned, as you can imagine. They asked what the meaning of this declaration was, what it revealed. I explained that there was anger in Israel, which expressed itself in different ways, including this way.
Do you think the Minister of Defense is right?
No. Without any ambiguity, no. I can tell you that during every meeting in which I took part, in the presence of the highest officials, the meeting always begins with a condemnation of the acts perpetrated by Hamas on October 7th. And it is explicitly said that it is not only our right but our duty to continue fighting Hamas until it is defeated.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much, and good luck in your mission.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. I have known about Israel and been interested in Israel for many years. It's actually the operations of the IDF in its early years.
This guy is a colonel. I don't want to say major colonel because major has its own meaning in the military. He's a prominent colonel in Britain.
From 1948 onwards, have always been studied very closely by British officers. I suspect by Norwegian army as well, but certainly by the British army. And I have got to know how they operate. I worked also closely with Israeli intelligence services when I was working in intelligence in London in the early part of this century from 2002 onwards. And got an even greater understanding. I've visited Israel many times, so I've come to know the reality of what Israel does. And when I left the army, there was the first of the 3 recent Gaza conflicts. And it was only at that time that I was able to publicly speak about it. So I knew what the truth was. I knew what the reality was. I knew what great friends Israel and the IDF was to the UK. We worked very closely together, military cooperation at the top level, intelligence cooperation, technical cooperation. Many young British soldiers are alive today because of Israeli battlefield medical technology. Many are alive because of Israeli technology that counters IEDs, bombs, and because of the technology we get from drones. So I knew what good friends Israel was to us, and hopefully we are to them. I could not therefore watch the lies being churned out against the IDF, against our allies, by many media, by the United Nations, by the EU, by think tanks, by so-called human rights groups, by university professors, and many, many other people. I couldn't sit by and watch that happening and not make an attempt to give a corrected and I hope objective and realistic assessment of what happened. So that's why I spoke out. And frankly, if my own soldiers in the British Army had been accused in the same way, I would do the same thing. If American soldiers had, or if Norwegian soldiers had, I would do the same thing. It's just that Israel gets attacked far more than anyone else. And we mustn't forget as well, and something that I always remember, is that they're not just our friends. They've made the most incredible contribution to our world, to our culture, to our progress, to our societies. And they will continue to make that contribution. And they are at the front line. We are fighting today an existential threat between Western civilization and Islamic civilization. It's not something that most people want to acknowledge. It is the reality. I'm not talking about a war with all Islam. I'm talking about a war with those Muslims who want to undermine our culture, of whom there are many. And Israel is at the front line of that. Israel is fighting our fight and holding back the situation. If it wasn't for Israel, it is highly likely that either now, already, or in the future, both Egypt and Jordan would succumb to attack and undermining by the Islamic State and other jihadists. That would not only cause huge problems in the region, but would also multiply the immense refugee problem that exists in Europe. So Israel's at the front line, and to me, sorry to answer your question in a long-winded way, it's the reason behind it, and the reason that I think it's important that all of us continue to present the proper picture of Israel and its fight is because they're our front line. They're at the front. They must not and cannot be allowed to collapse. Thank you.
مش هيك كان اخذت المعسكر كله شايفين في الدار بيطلع الله عبود كانوا هذا ما احنا في شهداء يعني في صور قرايب ابو غازي ومرته وامه هاي وابنه وبنته الصغيره هاي والشباب اللي الطايره فوق كلهم تحت مع الحج مع هذا كله تحت هذا بده تعديل هذا
Those statistics are all lies. All these statistics are from Hamas. They are all lies.
UN agencies are telling Sudan's warring parties that the time is running out to prevent starvation in the Darfur region.
There is so much talk, and we've gone through it for 2 weeks in a row now, all the fraud and hoax about Gaza famine. It's a hoax. It's an outright lie. It's fraud. And we've talked about it and discussed it in great detail for 2 weeks now. Let's try to see if we can get it. We've had that for 2 weeks now. And I started looking a little bit more into this whole famine fraud and hoax. And as I was doing so, there really is a big famine going on in Sudan, in the Darfur region of Sudan. And no one talks about it. And I've got some film, some pictures. They're going to be a little hard to look at for a few minutes of what's really going, where they keep talking about how famine is closing in on Gaza. Gaza is close to famine. Any day now, any minute, famine is going to start. And this is going on for 6 months, the famine that doesn't exist. Meanwhile, people are dropping dead left and right in Sudan of famine. They're eating leaves from trees and just dirt in the ground because there's nothing available. No one talks about that. You don't see that in the media. You don't talk about that. So I thought I'd show it. It's good for us to know what's going on out there in this world.
The warning comes as clashes intensified, and this is around the northern capital of El Fasser. And with that, we know the fighting is getting in the way of life-saving aid. Close to 25 million people, more than half the population, desperately need help. Since April of last year, the country has been gripped by violence between rival militaries, leading to a severe humanitarian crisis. So for more on this, we have reached Mathilde Vu. She is a Norwegian Refugee Council advocacy manager for Sudan, and we reached her today in Nairobi. Mathilde, thank you so much for taking the time, and welcome to the program.
Thank you.
I want to start by getting you to paint a picture, if you will, of the situation on the ground right now in Sudan.
Sure. I mean, it's a heartbreaking picture. It's basically a country that is collapsing in front of us. You said it earlier today. It's the world's largest displacement crisis. It's also going to be the world's largest hunger crisis. Right now, there are people who are eating leaves. They're eating cats, because there is nothing else for them to eat, to live on in regions of Darfur, for example. And it's been 1 year of everyday violence. Not a few days ago, there was a few villages being burned to the ground and people fleeing again in Darfur. And this has been ongoing like this for a year.
As you said, ongoing for a year. Could you, if you might, for our audience, bring us up to speed on how we got to this point?
It's such a complex history, right? Sudan has been, I mean, I think you auditors might know about Sudan and Darfur 20 years ago and the genocide that happened. There's been a history of violence in the country. There's been a failed transition to democracy. And there's been basically 2 generals that broke a war a year ago, and that civil war sort of turned into a war against civilians, with the entire capital being completely destroyed, half of the country being basically paralyzed by conflict, and the entire humanitarian crisis that is just unraveling every day. Every day there's more people dying, there's more people hungry. Soon there's going to be the rainy season with more and more people maybe exposed to cholera.
Remember, no one talks about this. No one gets up in the British Parliament and the US Congress, the squad. Hey, the squad, they're all supposed to be from Africa, right? African Americans. Nobody talks about it. Nobody cares about it. It's going on for a year. The people are eating leaves. No one talks about it. Nobody builds a pier, right, to help with humanitarian aid. There's no pier being built by Biden, and nobody's airlifting. I mean,
and it's just been ongoing like this for a year.
And as you mentioned, the situation's getting worse. The pressure is on to find a solution, to do something here. Do you feel the international community is paying enough attention to the crisis in Sudan?
No, sadly, not at all. Not at all to the level that it should. Not at all to the level that it has a responsibility to as well. I mean, again, it's been 1 year. How many times have you heard about it? How many times have people in Canada heard about Sudan and the ethnic cleansing that happened in Darfur? I would say probably none. And the fact that there is no international attention, that there is no political attention, that the international community hasn't come up as a group to, appeal to parties to the conflict to de-escalate, appeal to parties to the conflict to let aid flow into the country, to the people in need, is very problematic. 2 weeks ago.
Why aren't there riots on the campuses to demand that America pay more attention, and right, instead of Genocide Joe regarding the Middle East, why don't they scream Genocide Joe regarding Sudan? And why don't they demand that? Why wasn't Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush and Ocasio and all of these people, why aren't they concerned about anything? And why aren't they forcing the American Congress and the American presidency to to make this their priority? Why aren't they forcing, why don't they send the Secretary of State every Monday and Thursday over there to create a peace agreement and a ceasefire? They don't do it. They don't care about it. Only the Jews have to be a target.
Sure.
No, please continue. 2 weeks ago, you were saying.
2 weeks ago in Paris, there was a pledging conference gathering most of the international community around Sudan and the region. We only got half of the needs covered. We were already almost half of the year in. So it means that, in 3 months' time, we're still at the very low levels of humanitarian fundings when it comes to basically one of the largest food crisis in the world.
And the World Food Program, as we know, has warned that the time to prevent starvation is running out. So from your perspective, what needs to happen?
I have to say it's even more than running out. Like, we are in the starvation crisis, as I said earlier. Like, people are eating leaves and soils and cats. Some people are hungry and dying of hunger in the middle of a capital. The famine is already there. And sadly,
sometimes the titles, the captions come out on the screen and they get a word wrong here or there. And you saw it correctly. They're eating cats, C-A-T-S. They're eating soil, they're eating cats, and they're eating tea leaves. That wasn't a caption mistake. That's what's going on.
We're not seeing the funding coming as fast as possible. We're also not seeing the parties to the conflict allowing aid to actually flow. So that's really the number one priority, is for the parties to the conflict to let us work and reach people and feed people now, because in a few weeks' time, it's going to be too late and people are going to die by millions.
How for Sudan?
Our next story is from Sudan, the other country facing a civil war. With all the attention given to Gaza and Ukraine, the world sometimes forgets about the Sudan, about the war that's been raging on there for over a year, about the 49 million people there, a third of whom face food insecurity. About 5 million of them are on the brink of famine. Disturbing reports have been coming in about people eating whatever they can find to survive, from cats to tree leaves, even soil from the ground. Here's our report.
The children were collecting tree leaves and eating them. They took mango leaves and ate them. My cousins walked next to the school and collected the tree leaves, cooked them and ate them because we didn't know if we would have food for breakfast.
There were people in the neighborhood who ate the cats. Either you die from hunger or find a way.
Mango leaves boiled into a broth. Cats, sometimes even soil. Moist soil rolled into a ball, swallowed with some water. These are some of the things people have been eating in Sudan. They are doing everything they can to survive as the country stands on the brink of famine.
You could be sure if this were going on in Gaza, you would be hearing about it. You'd be seeing in all the newspapers and all the media pictures of Arabs eating cats, Arabs eating tea leaves or tree leaves, Arabs eating soil. You don't see that. You don't see it at all.
The people of Sudan are caught in the middle of a civil war. On the one side is a military junta. On the other side, a paramilitary group called the Rapid Support Forces. But it looks like neither side is supporting anyone but themselves. The RSF has looted aid shipments. They sell the food aid in the open market, charging exorbitant prices. The Sudanese army is no better.
Sudan has production that is more than it needs, and this is reassuring. This is clear evidence and answer to everyone who's defaming and saying there will be a famine in Sudan. There's no famine in Sudan.
They want the world to believe that everything is fine in Sudan. Never mind the thousands of people dead or millions on the brink of starvation. The junta claims to have it all under control, but the common people relay tales of their hunger. The charity Doctors Without Borders says that a child is dying every 2 hours due to malnutrition. The United Nations says 18 million people in Sudan are facing food insecurity. The world knows how serious the situation is and who is to blame.
right? So 18 million people facing famine or involved currently under famine. That's how many times? 10 times what's the population of Gaza. 10 times the Gaza population are in famine beyond all the others in Sudan. It's just unbelievable. You don't hear about it. No one cares about it. No one, only Israel. Israel's the international war criminal. No one else cares or hears about any of these things.
Right now, 5 million people in Sudan are on the brink of famine, and tens of millions of people are in desperate need of aid. And yet the warring parties continue to obstruct humanitarian access and aid.
But despite knowing this, it seems the world has no solutions, and things are about to get worse. The month of May is here. It signals the beginning of the lean season, the season between harvests. Food will be in short supply from May to September. This heightens the risk of starvation in Sudan. A report by a Netherlands-based think tank paints a grim picture. It has put out 3 scenarios. It says the best case is that 6% of Sudan's population will face catastrophic hunger. The worst case, 40%. The world needs to do more to prevent this. 20 million people cannot be left to starve. Their plight cannot be ignored, and their conflict cannot remain a forgotten war.
My point again, I've been saying it throughout these 2 clips. My point is that look what's going on, and look at all the time and effort and trouble that some of these other countries are going through to paint Israel in a bad light. And they send Blinken every single week, and he's trying to negotiate a settlement, and they're building piers, and they're dropping food, and they're trying to. Nobody talks about Sudan. I could spend the whole class just discussing hunger and famine in the world that could definitely be overcome. And yet nobody deals with it. Nobody cares about it, except when it comes to Israel. When it comes to Israel, there's genocide and apartheid and colonialism. It's just unbelievable. The hypocrisy and the Jew hatred.
أن المحافظات الوسطى باتت تغرق بالبضائع وبالمساعدات في الوقت الذي يعاني فيه الشمال من أزمة مجاعة ومن غلو كبير جدا ومتضاعف جدا في أسعار.
No evidence of famine. Let's see if I could stop this long enough. Nope. Too quick. I always wonder about that when you watch a movie or something and they put words on the screen too fast. Here we go. Shahaya, in the Shahaya invasion, they went back. They had cleared it out, and they moved on to the next place. Oh, thanks. Basically, Israel had cleared out and destroyed Hamas, kept going south to Rafah. Some Hamas fled Rafah before Israel got there and tried to re-establish themselves. So Israel had to go back in and re-invade, and they killed 40 terrorists, etc. It's always interesting to me when I look at these, how the prejudice, Times Now is out of India, I believe, the prejudice, how some of the defamations, they put a question mark at the end of this sentence, Israel doing on-the-spot murders, ? So that they cannot be called out later for lying. The way they defame and everything. But it's important to know the news that Israel has wiped out a whole bunch of terror nests. And it's, again, telling how Hamas bases itself in residential neighborhoods, in residential buildings, schools, and all kinds of mosques and hospitals. This is what you're dealing with.
And now to the war between Israel and Hamas. The Peace Now organization says Israel has now approved the largest seizure of land in the occupied West Bank. That's the other side from Gaza. You see the Gaza Strip there. And then the West Bank, the other occupied territory where Palestinians live. And this is the largest seizure, according to this nonprofit group Peace Now, in over 3 decades. It's a move that could grow the number of Israeli settlers in that designated Palestinian area and worsen the already soaring tensions in the.
Remember, number one, there's no such thing as Palestinians. There are Arabs of Judea and Samaria. There's also no such thing as West Bank. Just look at the picture a moment. This line, if you could see my cursor, this line is the river, the bank, up here, the Sea of Galilee, and then there's the Jordan River. Okay. You're saying, so what's a bank of a river? Like over here on a map, a few centimeters, millimeters. You're telling me that this is a bank over here, if you could see the cursor? This is a bank of this Jordan River. It's closer to the Mediterranean Sea. It might as well be called the East Bank of the Mediterranean Sea. You're calling this the West Bank? It's no West Bank. So why do they even have the name West Bank? Because the only names that ever have been this in history is Judea and Samaria. It's interesting that, and this is ABC News, so this is, as anti-Semites go, this is ABC, take it or leave it. The idea is that the official argument is, well, we don't call it Judea, Samaria, because that's taking sides. That's from the Jewish Bible. It's not from the Quran. Well, first of all, it's Judea, Samaria, not only in the Jewish Bible, but also the Christian Bible. What Christians call the New Testament, what Jews call the Christian Bible. It's also called Judea, Samaria. Jesus walked in Judea and Samaria. Second, you're not going to use biblical names. Meantime, everybody calls Jerusalem, that's a biblical name, Yerushalayim, and Shiloh, that's where the tabernacle originally was placed for 369 years. Hebron, that's a biblical name, where Avram and Sarah and Yitzchak and Rivka and Yaakov and Leah are buried. Bethlehem, that's a biblical name, where Rachel is buried. Syria, and go up there, Egypt is biblical, right? Jews exited the Bible, the Exodus. And Lebanon, that's biblical. And the city of Tyre, that's biblical. We're just learning on Tuesday night about the king Hiram of Tyre. It's all Beersheba, that's biblical. Everything in the Middle East is called by its biblical name, Jordan, Yarden. Joshua crossed the Jordan. That's a biblical name. Every single place in this entire region is called by a biblical name, Gaza. That's where Samson was, except for Judea, Samaria. No, we don't call that by its biblical name. It's taking sides. No, that's its biblical name. So they call it the West Bank, and then he refers to Palestinians. There are no Palestinians. This whole area, Israel, is Palestine. It's the one thing I agree with the kids on college campus. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. It's all one country. They're absolutely right. The only question is, who will the country be? Will it be the Arab country or a Jewish country? But from the river to the sea, eventually all of Israel will be free. And it's important, as this guy's talking about. So anyway, we continue. Israel assassinates a high-ranking Hezbollah commander. Remember, up in Lebanon, We're having trouble with the Lebanese, and Hezbollah are the terrorists up there. Hamas are the terrorists in Gaza, and Fatah are the terrorists in Judea, Samaria, and Hezbollah are the ones up in Lebanon.
In that region, this comes as Israeli Defense Forces have called for the largest evacuation order in southern Gaza since the war began in October. The World Health Organization says one of Gaza's largest hospitals in the south is now completely empty. ABC's chief national correspondent Matt Gutman is in Tel Aviv, Israel, with more. So, Matt, let's begin with your latest reporting of Israel assassinating a top commander in Hezbollah on yet a third front, that northern front with Lebanon. Tell us about it.
It happened this afternoon, Terry, at least here locally. Israel using a drone apparently to assassinate Mohammed Naima Nasser. He was a top commander in sort of the western part of their front with Israel. Probably one of the top two people that Israel has assassinated since Hezbollah began firing upon Israel shortly after the October 7th war began last year. And it's been this war of attrition, this sort of simmering war cross-border since then. And both sides have said they are very close to the brink of an all-out war, which we know would be devastating. But Israel, interestingly, actually took credit for this, which means they want everybody to know that they did it. Hezbollah responded by firing around 100 rockets in about 3 hours, which is a significant number. We haven't seen that very often since that war began in October 8th. And everybody here is on tenterhooks because on the one hand, there is a ceasefire peace deal, if you will, that the U.S. has brokered that is basically agreed to by both sides, the broad parameters at least. Hezbollah says it cannot sign it until Israel enters into a ceasefire in Gaza with Hamas. And on the other hand, both say that they're at a tipping point. They either go to war soon or they broker this ceasefire deal, but nobody knows which one will happen, Terry.
Right, so that is the story of a potentially wider war, which we're hearing here in Washington. The U.S. government expects this to widen. But let's get back to Gaza and the humanitarian and military situation there. The IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces evacuation orders in Gaza, just these huge sweeping evacuation orders for people who've already been displaced from one place to another. It also sounds like they're more urgent. So what message is the IDF sending? What's happening there?
Just before I answer that, I think it's important to bounce on what you just said, because you said something interesting, and that the U.S. expects it might happen, and that's what we're getting here from Israeli officials. They say that there's about, if you're a betting person, about a 30% probability that diplomacy will work between Israel and Hezbollah. And that means there's about a 70% chance that they could go to war. Hezbollah, by the way, vastly more powerful than Hamas in Gaza. As you mentioned, Israel ordering the evacuation of hundreds of thousands of people. We were driving in the northern part of the Gaza Strip today and saw fighting outside the Shejaiya neighborhood just outside Gaza City. It was incredibly intense. Smoke billowing into the sky. We saw a surface-to-air missile being fired at an Israeli helicopter. Israel firing back with artillery and missiles and bombs. So that is one segment of the fighting. The other is in the southern part of the Gaza Strip near Han Yunis, where about 250,000 people have been ordered to flee. And the images we're seeing, Terry, is of people sleeping in the streets because they don't know where to go. So many of these people have been displaced serially 3, 4, 5 times at this place that they don't know where to go anymore. And obviously there is still a significant concern in the Gaza Strip about hunger. It's hard to find food, and the food that there is exceedingly expensive at this point. So even though Israel says it's about wrapping up its campaign, at least the intensive fighting phase, it doesn't seem to be that close to being over at this point, Terry.
It sure doesn't, Matt. Matt Gutman, as always, thank you for your reporting on the ground there from the war between Israel and Hamas.
أولاً سيعرف العدو الصهيوني أن ما قام به من عملية غدر واغتيال لقادتنا سيرد عليه بأكثر من ذلك، ولن نسكت نحن عن أي اعتداء إن كان على الصعيد المدني أو العسكري. فهؤلاء الشهداء القادة تعودنا أن يستشهدوا في سبيل كرامة وحفظ هذا الوطن.
There's a growing backlash from the Jewish community after Rishi Sunak accused Keir Starmer of being a part-timer for saying he won't work after 6 p.m. on a Friday to spend time with his family.
Well, Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting joins us now. Very good morning to you. What do you make of what Rishi Sunak said, what the Conservatives have said? Just to point out, they tweeted yesterday, Keir Starmer said he'd clock off work at 6 p.m. if he became Prime Minister. You deserve better than a part-time Prime Minister. The only way to prevent this is to vote Conservative on Thursday.
Well, firstly, it's just not true. But from the party that delivered the biggest lockdown party in 10 Downing Street, the stench of their lies and hypocrisy is even more overwhelming than the vomit they left in number 10 for the Downing Street cleaners to mop up. And like those Downing Street cleaners, we will mop up the mess the Tories have left our country if people choose.
As you can see, we inherited our democracy and our way of government from the British. This is what democracy is.
Change by voting for Labour on Thursday.
That's interesting. So you're raising the issue that you just think that they're lying about it. But we have, this morning, there's a backlash from the Jewish community. And in fact, Lord Mann, the government's independent anti-Semitism advisor, said this is beyond incredulity. Rishi Sunak needs to attend one of our anti-Semitism awareness courses, precisely about the issue of Friday nights and the importance of family. But your leader didn't mention that it was for religious reasons in his interview with Chris Evans. So is the anti-Semitism point unfair?
Well, I'd say two things. Firstly, Keir is not clocking off on Fridays. He doesn't clock off on Fridays. He does try to protect Friday evenings for his kids for two reasons. One, he's a great dad. And secondly, his wife's family do have Jewish heritage and they try and keep Fridays special in keeping with their family's culture, faith and practice. And I just think we're 2 days away from an important choice for the country. Labour's talking about our vision for the country and how we turn Britain around. The Tories are slinging mud because it's all they've got left. They can't tell the truth about their record, so they lie about Labour's plans. And that's one of so many reasons.
Okay, now he's going to go into a political rant. But as I said at the beginning of today's program and class, this is all about Keir Starmer saying basically he's taking Friday nights off because his wife has observed Shabbat, not Orthodox, but like so many non-Orthodox Jews, nevertheless tries to make a Friday meal, a special family meal in honor of some aspect of Shabbat. And although Keir Starmer is not Jewish and even describes himself as an atheist, he has a very good marriage with his wife, agreed to rear his kids as Jews, and there's that. And he also apparently, after the dinner, one kid goes for one sport and another kid goes for another sport. So I'll just play a bit more of this and then we'll go on.
Why it's time to bring this circus to an end, to get them out of Downing Street and to turn the page on 14 years of Conservative failure, chaos and division.
Well, Streeting, I wonder whether you're being a bit too political about this, lies, slinging mud. Let's actually get to the issue. The issue is that Keir Starmer has a Jewish wife. He said in interviews that they like to keep Friday night dinner and prayers special for their children and Vic's 95-year-old dad. That is something that Conservative campaign advisors and Rishi Sunak would have been aware of, and they chose to make this attack. So when Lord John Mann says there should be an anti-Semitism awareness course of Rishi Sunak, when Jewish News says that they are offended, I mean, aren't they right to be offended? What has gone wrong here? It's not just about lies and playing politics. Isn't it something more serious?
I just think the Conservative Party is morally bankrupt. I think they've did a pretty good job at bankrupting the country too, with the disastrous mini budget. I'm beyond angry.
So this guy doesn't want to discuss Jews and the Sabbath, even though he's being given some red meat to accuse the other guy. But he's just interested in keeping focus before the election on his different political agenda. And so be it. But in our Sunday program and class, we so often bring to your attention not only the Gaza-Israel war, but important issues affecting Jews around the world in the previous week. And to bring to your attention that in England, of all places, the Friday night Shabbat has become an issue when the guy who now has been elected, the new prime minister, has made it a point to say he's not going to work Friday nights. And it's just fascinating.
Their behaviour this morning, I just think it is so low. It is so low. And to try and turn being a good dad and caring about your children and caring about their heritage and their family's faith, to try and turn that into some kind of weakness, I think shows they have run out of arguments, run out of steam, and they've actually just run out of morals and principles.
Victoria Starmer, wife of Labour Party leader Keir Starmer, is set to bring her rich Jewish heritage to number 10 Downing Street. Raised in North London, Victoria, originally Victoria Alexander, comes from a Polish Jewish family. Her father was of Polish Jewish descent, and her mother, a community doctor, converted to Judaism upon marriage. The Starmer household actively observes Jewish traditions, including Shabbat, with Keir, despite being an atheist, supporting these practices. Their children are raised with a strong awareness of their Jewish identity, and the family is an active member of the Liberal Jewish Synagogue in St. John's Wood, London. As Keir Starmer stands on the brink of becoming the next UK Prime Minister, Victoria's steadfast commitment to her faith and involvement in combating anti-Semitism highlight the significant role she will play as the new First Lady. Victoria's public persona, though understated, actively reflects her deep-rooted connections to the Jewish community. This is particularly relevant given the Labour Party's recent history with accusations of anti-Semitism. Keir has emphasized his commitment to tackling anti-Semitism within the party, reinforced by the cultural and religious practices observed in their home. This pivotal moment will see the Starmers bringing a unique cultural richness to British public life.
Ever since 2016, the number and the level of attacks you've been under has been steadily increasing, has been super intense. How do you walk through the fire of that?
I found this pretty much more or less the last main clip for today before we go into the, and then there'll be some, a musical ending, and then we go into the 20-minute Yahrzeit of my wife, Ellen, who passed away in 2020. I found this interesting to hear the first minute or so, less so, but then Ivanka Trump starts speaking about Loshon Horo. I just found it fascinating to hear it from her.
Very stoic about the whole thing. Don't think I've ever seen you respond.
And you know, she is an Orthodox Jew. She converted to Judaism, Orthodox, under Haskell Lickstein up in KJ and 85th and Lexington and Manhattan, and they're Shomer Shabbos.
On to an attack, you just let it pass over you. You stay positive and you focus on solving problems, and you didn't engage while being in DC. You didn't engage into the back and forth fire of the politics. So what's your philosophy behind that?
I appreciate your saying that I was very stoic about it. I think, you know, I feel things pretty deeply. So initially, some of that really took me off guard, like some of the derivative love and hatred, some of the intensity of the attacks. And there were times when it was so easy to counter it. I'd even write something out and say, well, I'm gonna press send, and never did. I felt that sort of getting into the mud, fighting back, it didn't run true to who I am as a human being. Like it felt at odds with who I am and how I want to spend my time. So I think as a result, I was oftentimes on the receiving end of a lot of cheap shots. And I'm okay with that because it's sort of the way I know how to be in the world. I was focused on things I thought mattered more. And, I think part of me also internalized, there's a concept in Judaism called Loshon Horo, which is translated into, I think, quite literally evil speech. And the idea that, speaking poorly of another is almost the moral equivalent to murder, because you can't really repair it. You can apologize, but you can't repair it. Another component of that is that it does as much damage to the person saying the words than it does to the person receiving them. And I think about that a lot. I talk about this concept with my kids a lot. And I'm not willing to pay the price of that fleeting and momentary satisfaction of sort of swinging back, because I think it would be too expensive for my soul. And that's how I kind of made peace with it, because I think that feels more true for me.
בקרוב תזרח השמש, נדע ימים יפים מאלה, הלב נלחם בדאגות. כולם יחזרו הביתה, נחכה להם למטה, הלוואי נדע בשורות טובות. כי עם הנצח לעולם לא מפחד, אפילו כשקשה לראות. כולם ביחד, אף אחד פה לא בודד, שישרפו המלחמות. עם ישראל חי, אם לא נשכח תמיד להיות מאוחדים. עם ישראל חי, בעליות בירידות, גם בשעות הכי קשות. הקדוש ברוך הוא שומר עלינו, אז מי יכול עלינו? כי אין לנו עוד מדינה, תעשה שלום בינינו, שמור על ילדינו, כי לא אבדה אמונה. עם ישראל חי. עם ישראל חי. או ארצי נחלתנו, לא תיפול כעת רוחנו, מסביב ברזל של חרבות. ויונה תפרוס כנפיים, התקווה בת שנות 2000, עוד נצא לשיר ברחובות. כי עם הנצח לעולם לא מפחד, אפילו כשקשה לראות. כולם ביחד, אף אחד פה לא בודד, שישרפו המלחמות. עם ישראל חי, אם לא נשכח תמיד להיות מאוחדים. עם ישראל חי,
As I said at the beginning, at the start of the class, I mentioned that today is the fourth Yahrzeit of my wife Ellen, Zichrona Livracha, and that every year on her Yahrzeit, I take out about 20 minutes of our Sunday program, but I don't like to do it at the beginning of the program because then it holds you hostage. And if you need to leave for any other reason, so I prefer to do it at the end of the program. So thank you very, very much for being here. And it's just another crazy week in the Jewish world with British. A month ago, who would expect that the biggest fight the day before the elections in Britain would be that the guy's going to be home on Shabbos on Friday nights? And it's just a crazy world. So thank you so much for being here. And now I'm going to have, this is the funeral eulogy when Ellen was laid to rest in Israel, and it's followed by one or two songs that speak to me in that context. Again, thanks so much for being here.
May HaKadosh Baruch Hu watch over this holy woman's neshama to assure that stream. Thank you for attending. My name is Max Bernstein, and my family and I have been very close with the Fischers for many years now. Having spent much time in their house when I was in high school, the rabbi in Rebbetzin had a direct hand in positively influencing my Yiddishkeit and encouraging me to make Aliyah. Today I will share Rabbi Fischer's hesped, or eulogy, and a few former members of his community will share a few words as well from Ellen. Beforehand, I would just like to say a few words from me and my family. My whole family feels that we lost a very dear, close friend. Ellen meant so much to us. Over the years, she hosted my family in her home over many Shabbatot, including hosting my parents-in-law and wife when we got engaged. Ellen was witty, full of wry humor, and one of the kindest people that we ever met. What we will miss most about her was her love of life and her love for her family and friends. Ellen would extend herself and go out of her way to do anything for anyone in the Bernstein family, as she demonstrated repeatedly. She welcomed us all into her home without hesitation, an example we strive to emulate in our own homes now. Our hearts are broken over her loss. I'll now deliver over the hesped that Rabbi Fischer wrote and requested me to read. In the 1500s, there was a very wealthy Jew in Krakow, Poland, who was perceived to be an unmitigated miser. He never seemed to give charity to anyone. As a result, he became known famously as Yosele the miser. And yet, when he died, suddenly a crisis befell all the poor Jews in the shtetl. Each had been finding anonymous envelopes left at their doors every Thursday night for years, always with a note on it reading, Likvod Shabbat, in honor of the Shabbat. Each envelope was just enough cash to assure that each poverty-stricken recipient family would have enough money to make it through the week. And everyone soon figured out that the person they had berated as Yosele the miser had been the most generous man who ever lived, because when Yosele died, the envelopes stopped. It is said that when Yosele ascended to Shemayim, to heaven, upon his passing, his soul's joy upon entering the sanctuary with Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah was reduced by one aspect of deep sadness. Even in heaven, there were no poor people in Gan Eden. There no longer would be anyone to whom Yosele could give tzedakah to brighten their Shabbos, their weeks, and their lives. Rebbetzin Ellen Fischer was a regular kid, a simple girl born to an honorable, noble, decent, ethical, working-class family in Binghamton in upstate New York. Not many great Jewish leaders come from Binghamton. Ellen worked hard in school, got good grades, even graduated second salutatorian in her high school class. Her parents were the most traditional family at the local conservative temple. When the temple management decided to move the congregation to the fancier, ritzier part of town, they increased annual membership dues and instituted a mandatory building fund. Ellen's parents were just not positioned to support such a move, so they left the temple and joined the local Orthodox shul, Beth David. That meant Ellen would now be in the Orthodox Youth Movement, NCSY, and no longer in the conservative temple group. Ellen became an Orthodox girl with gusto. Ellen Groh would go to her grandparents for Shabbat lunch, and then would spend the rest of Shabbat day with her Binghamton NCSY friends. She loved NCSY conventions, where cool madrichim, or youth advisors, with long hair and guitars, would play Hebrew folk songs and zmirot, and everyone would dance and sing at kumsitzes. All of the gifts and skills, the passions and loves that would define Rebbetzin Ellen's life were now starting to display themselves and take root. Ellen went to Syracuse University, the best regional college in upstate New York, and she graduated 4th in her class. She ate her meals at the kosher food plan that brought all the Orthodox students together. That is where she met her first husband, and the son of Holocaust survivors who had been in the Warsaw Ghetto and then escaped to fight with the partisans. Her husband pursued a law degree, so brought Ellen with him to Los Angeles, where he attended law school. They ended up in the Valley Village community of the San Fernando Valley of Los Angeles, and they became active in the Yahrzeit congregation. Meanwhile, Ellen was developing a career. She once had spent summers packing potato chips for Frito-Lay and remembered having to take long showers to get out the feel of oil. Later, she became a secretary at an insurance company where salesmen harassed her because she was beautiful and they could get away with bothering her. She finally went to her boss crying and he put an end to it. But Ellen aspired for more. Rebbetzin Ellen saw a job announcement at UCLA's Audit and Advisory Services, and she applied. She was hired and became a certified fraud examiner and a certified internal auditor, a real CIA. She rose to become manager of investigations, investigating allegations of white-collar crime like fraud and embezzlement. She became a star in her field. University deans consulted her. Crooks feared her. One of her cases became so famous that it was written up in the Los Angeles Times. She became a member of the editorial board of the main magazine in her professional field. Her write-up of that famous case became the first chapter in the leading textbook in her field. But even as Rebbetzin Ellen was shining on her way to a sterling 31-year career as manager of investigations at UCLA, a whole other side of her was waiting to emerge. Full of energy, a fabulous dancer, a singer with a voice so sweet that her high school choir teacher told her she had perfect pitch. Ellen also wanted to touch people's lives religiously, and she wanted to have Shabbat guests that she could cook for. She certainly already had so many friends in the Yahrzeit community, people with whom she could sing in shul and dance on Simchat Torah, people for whom she could cook when they would visit for a Shabbat meal. Ellen loved to cook, and she was a great cook. The best kosher caterer in Orange County asked her for some of her recipes. But Ellen did not yet have a larger world to cook for, to sing with and to dance with. She still did not have a complete outlet for all of her gifts, her religious passions, and her greater Jewish aspirations. That all started to change on February 27th, 2000, when she accepted a phone call from Rav Dov Fischer. Ellen's first marriage had ended after 21 years, and Rav Fischer's had ended after 25 years. On that night, they talked for 4 hours, each with a sore throat, croaking like two frogs in a Budweiser commercial. 3 nights later, they met for dinner at 7 p.m. They started talking about their respective humble working-class family roots, their shared values, their commitment to centrist Orthodox Judaism, their dreams for the future. 3 hours later, at 10 p.m., the waiter came and asked, Are you two going to order anything at all tonight? They're about to close the kitchen. That first night, Rav Dov and Ellen found themselves deeply in love. It was just a matter of waiting a few days before telling each other, because neither one wanted to seem unbalanced. For the next 20 years, Rav Dov and Ellen became inseparable. They found that they liked mostly the same things. Rav Fischer agreed to watch an occasional cooking show on TV, and Ellen would let him watch baseball. They both loved Seinfeld and Srugim, but they were particularly devoted to Judaism, to Torah, to spreading love, and to caring. They reached out wherever they could find the need in people's hearts to be approached by a Rav or Rebbetzin. When Rav Fischer, who had become a top-notch attorney specializing in complex business litigation, told Ellen that he wished so much that he could leave law practice and return to being a Rav, Ellen encouraged him to make the change. She told him not to worry about the money. When Rav Fischer told her that he no longer could bear the daily practice of law, but instead wanted to teach law, Ellen said, "Whatever makes my Dov happy is what makes me happy." When Rav Fischer explained to Ellen that he had a passion to write on secular, political, and Jewish religious issues of the day, Ellen said, "If that makes you happy and fulfilled, if that is what you feel called to do, then do it. And don't worry about the money. Once the publications realize how much you offer, they will pay you. And if they don't, all I want is for my Dov to be happy." And Rav Fischer's new pursuits opened the door for Ellen to realize her own passions and life dreams that this little girl from Binghamton never imagined possible. Their home became a center for Torah. Every week, more than 100 people came in and out of their home, whether to attend the Tuesday night Chumash class, the Thursday night Talmud class, Sunday morning women's advanced Torah text class, the Friday night minyan, the Sunday morning minyan, or to participate at the Friday night Shabbat dinner group of 15 young professionals ages 28 to 45. Individuals came to the house for pastoral counseling. Boys came to study for bar mitzvah, girls came to learn Rashi, Hebrew, and davening. Prospective couples came for prenuptial sessions. Rebbetzin Ellen also taught Kala class to prospective brides. Teens came to learn Gemara or Navi, the book of prophets, with Rav Fischer, to start learning some conversational Hebrew to prepare for their planned Aliyah moves to Israel. Couples came to discuss difficulties at home. In each and every way, Rebbetzin Ellen was at the center of the shul and the programming. On Tuesday nights, after 2 hours drive home from LA to Irvine on the jammed 405, she set the table and took out the cookies and crackers for Chumash class. On Wednesday nights, while Rav Fischer taught law school, Rebbetzin Ellen shopped for Shabbat cooking. And on Thursday night, while Gemara class was going on, she was in the kitchen cooking a magnificent 4-course meal every week. For soups, she might be making her fabulous homemade chicken soup or vegetable soup or lentil soup. Then there was gefilte fish. Then the main entree might be her brisket or her London broil or her kokavin chicken or her roast beef. There would be her Loshon Horo or her broccoli kogel or her 3-color vegetable kogel. She always included a vegetable. And then dessert. She was an amazing cook. Rav Fischer quickly figured out that people were coming to his Shabbat table not for his teachings, but for Rebbetzin Ellen's cooking. And once they were there, Rav Dov and Rebbetzin Ellen would lead with the singing of Zmirot, Shabbat table songs. With Lisa Pearl, who became one of Rebetzin's most valued friends, as were Judy Lapine, Barbara Walensky, Denise Fitzpatrick, Ruth Book, and Marlene Schiffer, everyone would sing for an hour, ending with benching. There was not a facet of the shul where Rebbetzin Ellen was not central. For Sunday morning women's class, she laid out a huge brunch and then sat and participated in the intellectually rigorous 2-hour class. When people came for meals, she was there at the sink, towel in hand, to guide newcomers through the Netilat Yadayim, blessing recited while washing before eating bread. Before Hanukkah and Purim parties, she would sit on the phone all day, making dozens and dozens of phone calls to assure a great attendance. At the Pesach Community Sedarim, she co-hosted every Seder with her husband. These were dreams she never even knew that, as a girl from Binghamton, she could dare to dream. When she asked Rav Dov early during their courtship, "Will you allow me to have regular Shabbat dinner and lunch guests during our marriage?" he responded, "Let's go out right now and buy as many pots and pans as you can keep busy." They proved to be an amazing couple. The same sense of humor, similar inside references. As Rav Dov has said, it would be narcissistic to say that no couple ever loved each other as much as we, but it definitely can be said that no couple ever adored, admired, and deeply loved each other more than we. Even in that, they were both sticklers for English grammar. When watching TV, they would correct the wrong grammar on the screen. They loved watching Arrested Development, Shark Tank, Downton Abbey, and Better Call Saul. They loved movies like Fargo and The Producers. They loved driving 20 minutes to the kosher-certified Krispy Kremes for a donut and coffee, or spending an hour at a Coffee Bean. On special occasions, they would drive an hour each way to Los Angeles for dinner at Shiloh, and they both loved their steak rare. Yes, they differed a bit on desserts. Rav Dov loved the gooey ones, chocolate mousse and chiffon pies, while Rebbetzin Ellen loved nothing more than a piece of kiffle with sugar on it, although she also loved key lime pie and pralines and cream ice cream. But more than anything else, Rebbetzin Ellen and Rav Dov loved each other. At the Friday night Shabbat table, she would not allow any other person, even those who helped with the serving, ever to serve the Rav's soup except for her. She adored him and he adored her. For 20 years, he annually celebrated Telephone Day on February 27th with a different telephone-related gift each year. And during the past 3 years, Rebbetzin Ellen accompanied Rav Dov in the car every Wednesday for 2 hours to Los Angeles and then another 2 hours back to attend the 4 hours of law school classes that he taught. She would sit in the back of the classroom, reading a book about one of the American presidents, and whenever Professor Fischer would forget a word or a joke, he would ask her and she would fill it in. As their 20 years rolled by, it became even clearer that Rebbetzin Ellen actually was a tzaddiket, a righteous, holy woman. She used her beautiful singing voice to draw people to the love of Shabbat. She used her incredible dancing skills to engage women into dancing at weddings, at Simchat Torah, at Ufrufs, and at Bar Mitzvahs. She used her cooking skills to draw people to class and to Shabbat. She used her brilliant mind to teach Torah, sometimes in a group setting, sometimes in a one-on-one setting. Her beautiful face and smile did not have to be used, it simply drew people in. Her laughter was infectious. Her energy was so boundless that both her stepson Aharon and her husband called her the Energizer Rabbit. She had the most amazing long-term memory. Once it was in her head, it was locked in. A few weeks ago, when someone in the Fischer house saw a beautiful picture of their Hawaii honeymoon, someone asked the Rav who took the photo. He answered, "Who knows, it was 20 years ago." Rebbetzin Ellen, overhearing the exchange, softly interjected, "It was Ted the bus driver." And it was. And she was a most remarkable daughter. Every single morning for years, she would wake up at 5 a.m. Pacific time so that she could daven a complete morning shacharit prayer service and still FaceTime her father, Mr. Robert Groh, by 8:30 a.m. on the East Coast before he would begin his day. She loved her father so deeply that every Motzei Shabbat or Saturday night, she would call the Jewish home where her father now lives to check that he was all right, since she could not call that morning because of the rules of Shabbat. So now, this beautiful human being, a gift to so many hundreds who came to know her well, ends this segment of her beautiful, holy soul's eternal journey to Gan Eden, or paradise, and Olam Haba, the world to come. Few people whom we ever will encounter will deserve it more. But when she arrives, despite all the eternal rewards that surely await her as she merits benefiting from the light and luminescence of the Shekhinah, or God's omnipresence, she may feel a tinge of sadness because there will be no one in Gan Eden to cook for, no one to telephone for a shul program, no soup to serve her husband. But her soul will find comfort because there surely will be singing, there surely will be Torah, there surely will be a need for a soul that has a memory that can grasp all of eternity. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu watch over this holy woman's neshama, guided through Gan Eden to elevated regions, and may our Rebbetzin Ellen be a Melitza Yosher, an advocate for us here in the halls of paradise. May her soul be blessed forever. Amen.
I'm going to sing you a song that is dedicated actually to my late wife.
Colin, I think it's extraordinary you've come here. The stage is yours.
Thank you very much. It must have been cold there in my shadow. To never see sunlight on your face. You did your best to make me shine. You always walked a step behind. I was the one with all the glory, while you were the one with all the strength. Beautiful face without a name. I never once heard you complain. Did you ever know that you're my hero? And everything that I'd like to be. I could fly higher than an eagle, 'cause you are the wind beneath my wings. It might have appeared to go unnoticed, but I have it all here in my heart. I want you to know I know the truth. I would be nothing without you. Did you ever know that you're my hero? And everything that I'd like to be. I could fly higher than an eagle. You are the wind beneath my wings.
I want to thank everybody for allowing me to remember my wife Ellen this way. I'm very grateful that you stayed, for those who did, and may we all have a blessed week, and may good things happen for all of us. I was very blessed to have such a wife for 20 years. I'm blessed to have Denise, who helped me continue with the same quality of love. And I urge you, those people in your life whom you really love, let them know it while you're alive and they're alive. Let them know it, because there's that regret that so many times people feel afterwards, wishing that I wish I had said X or Y or Z and told this person how much I loved, whether it's a child, not only a spouse, but a child or a parent. While you're alive and they're alive, it makes a world of difference if you're able in your lifetime to know that you let them know how much you love them and how much you appreciated what they brought to your life. I'm just going to let it go for now and have a wonderful week. Thank you for being part of this. Bye-bye.